you probably know, we live in a culture where religion and Christianity is quite taboo. It's not the status quo to be a Christian. And so we see that a lot in our culture, right? That we're shunned against talking about religion. How many times do you talk about religion in your friend groups? It's something we like to shy away from. And so because of that, we're questioned for doing the things we do. We're questioned for why we go to church, why do we do the church things, why do we come up to cast for Christ. And so while going through our life, we're going to see instances of people questioning our faith. Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we go to church? Why do we go to cast for Christ? Why do we follow Jesus? Why do we believe this is true? It's only going to get worse and worse as you go on into life. We're at the end of the year now, and so we're starting to move on to the next stages of our life, whether next grade, going on to the next year of high school, going on to some of us on to college. And so we're going to see as we go on, you're going to have people questioning your faith, challenging us. It's important through that defining truth, going back and being, when you're confronted with such challenges and such questions, how do you direct them back to truth? How do you tell them the truth? How do you look for that? And so we can see that challenges are pretty common in the Bible. We see that a lot. Most commonly, we see that Job is tested, and this really shows us the purpose behind us being tested and challenged. And so he's tested in multiple ways. He gets all his riches, all of his farm, all of his possessions are taken away from him, and that is a way that God was testing him. Actually, his whole family, he gets diseased, everything is taken away from him. And that's a way of God challenging him, testing his faith. Just like if in the ways that you're tested like math, or you're tested in science, you're tested in history, those are ways that you're tested to be able to test the measure of your knowledge in those areas. And so just like that, you're tested in your faith. You're going to be tested in this similar ways. You're going to be questioned and asked about your faith, and that's a way of being able to show the measure of your faith. And so it's important to know how that relates back to truth, right? So you want to be able to respond in ways that are going to be truthful and go back to what God has said. And so there's three ways to go about answering those tough questions, right? If someone approaches you and says, why do you believe in Jesus? Why do you go to church? Why do you come to Catholic Christ, etc.? And so a first way to go about doing that is the Bible. The Bible is an excellent source for truth. We know it comes directly from God. In John, it talks about, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God and was God. And we also see that the Word became flesh. We can see that the Bible and Jesus are very much intertwined, and the truth in there is evident in the whole book. We also know that the book is inspired, right? So there's a series of authors that write up the Bible, and all of those people were inspired by God to write their books. As well as from a historical perspective, the Bible is one of the most well-sourced books. We can see that it's got 5,000 original Greek copies, and I think over 10,000 original Latin copies. It's got a lot of measure of historical truth as well as biblical truth. And so it's important when posed with questions to be able to have your biblical knowledge on hand. When someone asks you about maybe a theological question, being able to relate and have the knowledge of the Bible. So I'd like to encourage you guys to make sure to stay in the Word, read through it, and have that knowledge on hand to be able to know the truth when prompted to answer questions about it. The second thing is what we have here today, fellowship. Being able to have people you can rely on and to ask questions about, having mentor figures like Ms. Jay's talked about a lot, is being able to find some people that you're able to rely on and ask questions with. Because likely, sometimes there's people that are way better at answering some questions than there are other people.
Right.
And so being able to be in groups and being able to have someone to rely on, especially a mentor figure. A mentor figure is very handy. If you don't have one, being able to rely on someone that has a lot more wisdom than you and being able to learn from them and see how they answer questions that are challenging to them. And so that's a great way to be able to learn truth and being able to be discipled in that way. And then finally, the third thing would be prayer. And so prayer is very important. There's rarely a solution or rarely a problem that can't be solved with prayer. It's always a good idea to go to that. And because, right, and especially in this scenario, prayer is a direct line to God, right? So this is exactly how God uses to tell us, or how we tell God stuff. Right? Just as the Bible is the way of God telling us things, we ask God and get His wisdom on things through prayer. And I think that's just about it. So.
We go ahead and pray
when posed with challenging questions about their faith and the things that are going to happen as they go on to the next stages of their life, that they'll be able to have confidence and be able to withstand the pressures that face them. I pray that they will be able to rely on your word and your counseling, as well as the counseling of their peers and their fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. I pray that you go out with boldness and with strength as you go out this week. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So this has always been a question that I'm asked when I say that I'm a Christian. How do we know that the Bible wasn't changed over time?
That's a really good question. I think an important thing there is that the Bible, like I said, has thousands of original copies. And so when someone makes a new translation of the Bible, there's a lot of effort going back to not just previous iterations of the Bible, but going back to like original sources, so translating them and comparing. And there's a lot of linguist efforts in that too, is making sure that you have an accurate translation. There's like two different ways to translate the Bible, literal and like a figurative idea way. And so finding the balance is usually where it comes down to an accurate translation. And so knowing it wasn't changed comes down to comparing previous ones from more older ones, like your Greek copies, which are probably going to be back to as closest to the original as possible, and sourcing those. Yeah. Yeah. And so there's a lot of questions like that that are, kind of tricky and more historically related that you might want to ask someone that may have a little more knowledge. And I'm pretty sure myself, I'm really open to asking questions like that one. I think Sarah Kate probably has a wealth of knowledge as well, and Miss J. So yeah, those questions are always great.